players gather to cast powerful spells, some of the oldest and most powerful in the history of Magic the Gathering. Jumbo Cactuar, Suplex, Instant Ramen, and many others, battling head-to-head in brutal combat. They all have one thing in common: to uphold their legacy and the search for eternal glory.
The Eternal Glory podcast is brought to you by the minds behind Bosch and Roll on YouTube, Arabian University, and theepicstorm.com. This episode is sponsored by Moxfield and financial advisor and certified financial planner Nicholas Robb.
Hello, and welcome to episode 151 of the Eternal Glory podcast, Final Fantasy Previews. We've already recorded 30 minutes of introduction and banter for the week, available in our supporter-exclusive pre-show. Check out patreon.com/eternalglory to gain access, or join as a YouTube member for the same content on YouTube instead. As always, I'm Phil Gallagher, aka Thraben U.
I'm Brian Coval, aka Bosch and Roll.
And I'm Bryant Cook of the Epic Storm.
Shout out to our new YouTube member, Metal Gear Luke, who has joined since the last episode. You and the rest of our subscribers will get to enjoy hot takes about charcuterie and why it sucks.
To win in Magic, adjust your strategy as the game changes. The same is true of investments. Nicholas Ropp, financial advisor and certified financial planner, can help you create a game plan for your financial goals. Call 314-968-3783 or email nicholas.ropp@edwardjones.com. That's nicholas.raupp@edwardjones.com to get started today. Edward Jones, member SIPC.
And if you're interested in advertising to 10,000 plus Eternal gamers every episode, reach out to us. We're always accepting new sponsors. And while I'm talking, I have a quick correction on our last episode. I said about 8 minutes in that I'm not allowed to play challenges anymore. And, when I talk with YouTube, we know about my life and how I have a kid, and I don't have time to play Magic on the weekends. So in our conversation, YouTube knew what I meant. However, our audience isn't all paying supporters, and a bunch of them didn't know that. So there was a lot of questions about me being shadow banned from Magic. Unfortunately, that is not the case. I am not banned from Magic the Gathering. I just don't have time on weekends to sit in front of a computer for 8 hours because I have a small child who loves going to the park and zoo and everything else. So not banned, unfortunately, and I'm still here.
Once again, eliminated from Legacy tournaments by Karn the Great Creator. You just can't escape. I've got a little caveat before the main topic as well. We are recording this a week before we normally do, though releasing it at the same time. A little awkward to lose a week of info right in the middle of spoiler season, but I am leaving for my honeymoon the day after we record this, and I'll be back basically the day that this releases 2 weeks later. And if there is a hot new Legacy card that drops in the week between when we record this and when it goes live, we will talk about it on the next episode. Don't worry, I promise. But if things sound a little out of date or we miss something very obvious, that's why. But we will talk about, right now, the Final Fantasy spoilers that are currently available as of May 19th.
And for those of you freaking out about the next big summer set, as a reminder, this set is coming through standard. That means that things are going to be a little bit more reasonable than we might have seen from some of the things like the Lord of the Rings set, the various Modern Horizon sets, some of the supplemental Commander products, and other direct-to-modern and direct-to-legacy sets.
Reasonable as in card power level, not necessarily price. There's a lot of people that are deeply upset with the price of a booster pack from Final Fantasy. That said, I'm going to spend so much money on this set. It's going to be great. It's so awesome.
And let me just remind you, buying packs is for suckers anyway. Buy singles. Wait a week or two if you can. Let the suckers, let the marks buy the packs and crack them, and then they will flip the cards that you actually want to vendors at half of their value, and then you can buy them there. You don't have to buy packs to play constructed Magic, which is generally what we focus on here. Obviously, if you do like draft or whatever you do with your sealed packs, that will cost more, and that does suck. If you are just trying to get legacy cards, the cost of a booster pack does not affect you very directly.
And as another general warning, this set is full of legendary creatures. And within the context of evaluating these cards for Legacy specifically, that means that they are weak to Karakas, and you might not want to play 4 of all of these cards as they are bad in multiples in many, many, many cases.
Yeah, that's a theme throughout the set. There's, how many of these things are there, Phil? 16, 15 Final Fantasies? Where are we?
Oh, there's a bunch of spin-off games too. There's approximately 1 billion.
Yeah, roughly 8 trillion Final Fantasy games exist. They all feature characters, and Magic has done a good job handling Universes Beyond and touching all the things. Like they did all 15 Doctors that exist in the Doctor Who thing. There were 2 of them that weren't out yet when Doctor Who decks came out, and they released them as a secret lair as soon as the show rolled over. So they even had like the next 2 Doctors in the can ready to send. They treat these things extremely carefully, and they want it to hit the audience that it's for. So if there's some side quest character in Final Fantasy II that doesn't get a card, someone's going to be mad about that. And they're going to make sure that person doesn't get mad. And that means a shitload of legends. And legend is a drawback in the Magic the Gathering mechanical universe. That isn't necessarily front of mind for a lot of people, but if you have Grizzly Bear and Legendary Grizzly Bear, the Legendary Grizzly Bear is worse when you're playing Constructed Magic. If you're playing Commander, it's a singleton format. The legend rule doesn't matter. A legend can be your commander. Obviously, it's upside there. But I think a lot of people, because Commander's so big these days, they lose sight that, gold is worse than monocolor. It's harder to cast. It is a harder card to include in a deck. The cards tend to be better because of the mana system, but gold is a drawback compared to monocolor cards. Legend is a drawback compared to non-legendary cards.
Back in my day, when you had a legend in play and I had the same one in my hand, I couldn't cast it, Brian. Let's go back to that.
Yeah, and for a while, my legend doombladed your legend, and they both died. And then now, do you remember, let's wax poetic here, when they changed the legend rule to how it functions today? Jace the Mind Sculptor was the defining card of Legacy. And I remember the whole Legacy community being like, oh my god, Jace mirrors are going to be awful. Both of us brainstorming every turn. There's going to be so much going on. I wish they just wiped each other out like they used to. Turned out Jace mirrors rule. And now we can't even play Jace anymore.
But I guess let's focus on the new. And summons are going to be a pretty interesting thing moving forward. So they are sort of stacked creatures. They have an ETB ability and trigger each turn, and then they're going to usually go away after 2 to 3 turns, except I think the Knights of the Round one, which just sticks around forever, which is very appropriate to the video game.
Yeah, so a summon is a enchantment creature - saga and whatever the creature type is. That means they are affected by things that affect creatures, enchantments, and sagas. And because they are sagas, they will eventually die on their own. Most of them are templated in a way where you get some creature that's way above rate for the mana you spend. They have some ETB ability in the form of the Chapter 1 of the saga, and then they have a Chapter 2 ability, and then that's the turn they can attack, and then on turn 3, they poof away in some blaze of glory. You usually are going to get 1, maybe 2 attacks out of these things before they're gone, but them being enchantments, maybe there's a spot in something like Enchantress for them, or something like Replenish. You could grab some of the big ones with Academy Rector. There's stuff to work on with that. You can also manipulate the counters on the sagas with things like Hex Parasite or Power Conduit. If you want to keep your creature around a little longer, do a little extra work, that's going to be an interesting space to explore. I'm not sure if any of these really pass the bar in Legacy, but there is one, Bahamut, who is a 9/9. I'll read just all the words on this. Summon : Bahamut. It's 9 colorless mana. Enchantment creature - saga dragon. It is an enchantment for everything I just said. It's also a creature for things like reanimate and sneak attack. Chapter 1 and 2 are destroy target non-land permanent. Chapter 3 is draw 2 cards. Chapter 4 is this creature deals damage equal to the total mana value of other permanents you control to each opponent. Probably not better than, Atraxa or Emrakul to sneak out. Probably not better than Archon of Cruelty to reanimate. It is just kind of cool that we could think about it in all of these terms. Also, the Rectors, Academy and Arena Rector. Academy Rector gets enchantments, Arena Rector gets planeswalkers. I've played plenty of decks that play a little bit of each, because sometimes you need a planeswalker to solve problems enchantments can't. Having Bahamut as a pseudo planeswalker kind of thing in just an Academy Rector package could be sweet.
I expect these summons to do something in some format, like someone is going to find exactly the right way to remove counters and do something cool with them. And I am looking forward to seeing what that is. I think, interestingly, we also have lands that are adventures as well.
Yeah, I saw my first one today, the Lindblom Industrial Regency. So cool. And I love that they fixed the MDFC problem with these guys, because it is a land, which means that you don't get to benefit from Goblin Charbelcher or Balustrade Spy. So yes, it has the spell attached to it, but it's still a land where it counts. So I think that this is just beautiful design.
Right, and for those not immediately fluent in the lingo, the adventures are creatures like Brazen Borrower that you can play as just a 3/1 flying for 3 mana, or you could spend the adventure cost to get Petty Theft, which bounces a non-land permanent and opponent controls. And if you use the adventure cost, the card goes on an adventure, and then you could play the main part, the 3/1 flyer, out of Brazen Borrower. These lands, they're just lands that tap for colors, and then they have, in some cases, pretty expensive. I think one of them's even a 7-drop on the adventure side. So these are going to be lands more than they're going to be spells, I think. They do exist in an interesting space between MDFCs and the Neon Dynasty Beseju channel land cycle, where the channel lands are better effects at a better rate, but you don't get the land if you use it. And MDFCs, you pick either the land or the spell, plus everything Bryant just said about Balustrade Spy and Chrome Mox going off with them, which these things don't. These ones give you the opportunity to get the effect and then hit your land drop, which is pretty cool.
So I've got one of these pulled up. Xanarkand Ancient Metropolis. This is the green one. So it can either be a land that enters tapped that taps for green, or for 6 mana, the adventure version is create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, put a +1/+1 counter on it for each land you control. And this is going to be really good flexibility, like this land cycle. I am excited to see the rest of them. I'm not sure that they all have been spoiled as of this time.
Yeah, one of them is a blue land that for 6 mills your opponent for half their library. And that's not going to get legacy play, but I could see in a power level format like Standard, you just put 4 of those in your control deck. I've played Standard decks in recent memory that win with Jace Completed Mind and the 4/4 Restless Reef, the dual land that when it attacks mills your opponent for 4. I've played mill as a primary win con in Standard control decks in the last year. And just having 4 islands that can double as dome your opponent for half their deck, I think something like that's going to see play in lower power formats.
The red one that I read is not nearly as cool. If you guys don't mind, if I might as well tell the audience what the other half does. So Lindblom Industrial Regency, it taps for a red, enters tapped, or you have a Mage Siege for 2 in red. It's an instant adventure. You get a 0/1 black wizard that says whenever you cast a non-creature spell, this token deals 1 to each opponent. So probably worse than the other 2 that you read, but that's what it does if you're interested in pinging people.
I want to shout out Moxfield real quick here, sponsor of the show. They're great. For every preview season, they do a really neat thing. If you click on their hey, Final Fantasy preview cards, you can specifically filter for the ones that are only new cards. So they have brand new cards and then an exciting reprint section. And that was very, very helpful in preparing for today's notes.
Yep, and as soon as a card exists out anywhere, they will put it into a place where you can put it in your deck, and it'll be red and tell you it's not format legal until it's actually released, but it's out there. You can start building with any card as soon as Moxfield knows it exists.
All right, and with that, let's get into some of these cards. Let's start with Sephiroth, Fabled Soldier. This is one that I have already seen the EDH and CEDH people talking about. It's 2 and a black for a 3/3. Whenever it enters or attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, draw a card. Whenever another target creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. If this is the fourth time this ability has resolved, transform Sephiroth. So the other side is then Sephiroth, One-Winged Angel. Flavor is perfect. Flying 5/5 with Supernova. As this creature transforms into Sephiroth, One-Winged Angel, you get an emblem with whenever a creature dies, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. And whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice any number of creatures. If you do, you draw that many cards.
So completely unrelated to what the card actually does, the soldier being all caps makes me think that Morrow accidentally hit cap lock and they just kept typing, and all of R&D was just afraid to correct it. I don't know why soldier is capitalized, but the rest of it isn't.
Soldier is an acronym. Hate to burst your bubble, but that's the real reason.
Okay.
Yeah, Mark Rosewater just... Sephiroth fabled. Soldier! Okay, you're the boss. Okay, but as far as this actual card goes, 2 and a B, that's Ancient Tomb mana. Just a Chromox and an Ancient Tomb can play this thing. I've played weirder cards than this because they cost 2 and a color. And the backside of this, we're gonna kind of yada yada the legendary aspect. I will point out that it is a legend, but we mentioned at the top, weakness to Karak is bad in multiples. Unless you're pitching it to Chromox, then it might be okay in multiples. But it is a legend, and 3/3 for 3, not really legacy stats for Ancient Tomb stuff. It is a source of card advantage, and if you need a giant aristocrat effect, there's one right there. I don't know. I think this looks worse to me in Legacy than many of the other things we could cast with it.
Yes, I was excited about this card for EDH potential, where like, hey, I would like to do shenanigans with looping my Gravecrawler and other recursive creatures. This slots in so well to those sorts of strategies. And I forget what commander it was, but I saw some of the CEDH folks talking about how like this had a home in their deck that was already trying to do infinite loops that this would be synergistic with.
Yeah, for sure. Anyone doing like an Unbound Gravecrawler loop with Phyrexian Altar or something like that, this is just another win con you can put in there.
All right. Next up is Vivv or Nitier, which I imagine people like Bryant are really, really going to enjoy. So this is a colorless, a blue, and a red for a 0/3 wizard. A 0 ability of add X mana in any combination of blue and or red, where X is Vivv's power. Activate only during your turn and only once each turn. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Vivv, and it deals 1 damage to each opponent.
This seems something that's decent for like dual commander, in my opinion. I don't know how it's going to be in constructed. Being a 3-mana 0/3 where then you have to cast a bunch of spells after, so it sort of has the Bergy God of Storytelling problem, where the mana value is so high that if you realistically want to do something broken, you have to play it past the turn and then untap. Where, are you going to do that in Legacy? I'm not so sure, but for Commander or Dual Commander, I think that this card is really sweet.
Yeah, I saw that Quicksilver Elemental already spiked, which is some Chungo from, I think, Mirrodin block that can copy the activated abilities of another creature. And you know, it has base power 4, so you're going nuts pretty quickly.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, not a Legacy interaction, though.
What raises my eyebrow about this card is the fact that its 0 mana ability that adds mana can be used the turn that it comes down. So if you have some starting mana already and you play this, you play like 2 cards afterwards, you end up rebuying most or all of your mana for Vivv, and you continue to kind of go nuts. This is a very cool card, and the art slaps.
Yeah, the +1 counter and deal 1, like +1, deal 1 will probably add up if you're trying to do some sort of like medium speed grape shot stuff with this, but the +1 counter, it's not prowess. He keeps this +1, so any work you do will pay off as mana on subsequent turns. And yeah, like resolving this, not easy. Bergy is at least monocolor. You can get it off Ancient Tomb or write a flame into it. You have to find a blue and a red for this one. But like playing a Lotus Petal afterwards, opponent takes 1, and now you have 2 mana because you can activate Vivv for 1, and you have your Lotus Petal, 2 petals. Now you're casting Bergy. Maybe the whole squad gets together. I don't know. That's actually more because it scales. 2 Lotus Petals is 4 mana with Vivv, so it scales like pretty aggressively. if you have spells to cast. But again, you have to resolve a 3-drop, then do more stuff.
All right. Next up is Emet-Selch Unsundered. This is 1 colorless blue and a black for a 2/4 Elder Wizard with Vigilance. Whenever it enters or attacks, draw a card, then discard a card. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 14 or more cards in your graveyard, you may transform this, and it becomes a 6/6 Vigilant creature with, during your turn, you may play cards from your graveyard. If a card or token would be put into your graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead.
This one has so much hype around it for the CEH community. When I was tagged the day that it was spoiled when they announced the Final Fantasy set, they're like, we can't believe they put Yawgmoth's Will as a commander. Oh my god, Yawgmoth's Will as a commander. Yeah, I mean, during your upkeep, so this thing lived a full turn cycle in a 4-player game, no one else won the game, and you have 14 cards in graveyard, you get to do the thing. Like, yeah, there's going to be a world in which this happens, but I think it's sort of few and far between. And in Legacy, do you think that this is going to pass the bar? I'm not like, what deck is interested in this sort of thing? Like, do you see Ad Nauseam Tendrils playing this? They're a deck that wants a full graveyard. They're in Dimir. I don't know if they want a 3 mana value creature that has to attack in order to win. Like, I just don't see the home for this card, but I'm willing to be wrong.
Yeah, this looks like kind of stinky butts to me. I think at the beginning of your upkeep kills it. If you could play it when you have 14 cards in your graveyard, if it was like Dark Depths, just a game state trigger, if at any point this is true, this flips, then having Yawg-Will in the command zone would make some sense to me for CEDH. But yeah, resolving this, getting around a whole turn cycle, and having 14 cards in your graveyard when it happens, I'm not a believer.
I am not a believer in this one for Legacy. I have played against this in high power casual. Someone had proxied it up immediately after seeing the Final Fantasy set spoiled, and I played against this at the previous MagicCon that I was at. And in high power casual, like, this was real scary. There was like some reanimate nonsense going on early on that transformed into like non-deterministic combo in the mid game. EDH folks will probably enjoy this one, but probably not for constructed.
Yeah, this actually reminds me of a commander who I have built, Chun-Li, the spell slinger. That's not her real name. Countless Kicks. Chun-Li Countless Kicks. It reads very powerful, but once you understand how much you have to do to set it up, how much mana you have to put in, the fact you need to get around the turn cycle at least once, it starts to become not that powerful. Once it gets going, hell yeah. But getting it going, of course, is the challenge of anyone trying to do anything in Magic the Gathering.
So the next one is for colorless fans. Ultima, Origin of Oblivion. This is 5 mana for a 4/4 legendary creature god with flying. Whenever Ultima attacks, put a blight counter on target land. For as long as that land has a blight counter on it, it loses all land types and abilities and just taps for colorless. And whenever you tap a land for colorless, you add an additional colorless. Is
this better than Forsaken Monument at the same mana value? Like Forsaken Monument, colorless creatures you control get +2/+2. When you tap a permanent for colorless, get an extra colorless. When you cast a colorless spell, gain 2 life. What are we doing with this? So it's below rate. 5 mana for a 4/4, even if it flies. Just on stats, this is not even a standard card, much less a legacy one. And it has to attack to get the blight counter. If it was like enters or attacks, maybe I could see a spot where picking off something important is there, but I feel like this is flavor text. All of this shit in the middle, when it attacks blight a land. When is that going to happen?
Yeah, so I don't like this one for Legacy, but I wonder if there is some sort of deck fueled by Cloud Posts or Tron lands or something of that nature somewhere that wants this. Because the ability to effectively double your mana at 5 mana is kind of neat. The ability to deny some mana is potentially neat. It's not denying mana, but it's shutting off colors. This one raised my eyebrow when I saw it, and then I was just comparing it to like the One Ring in Legacy and like New Ugin in Legacy, and then I wasn't excited about it anymore.
Maybe we could try to sell the people that are upset over the Sowing Mycospawn ban. Be like, hey, here's a bridge. You should buy it. It's really good, I promise.
We have Sowing Mycospawn at home.
If you want to hit me with, why are you worried about a 5-drop in Legacy? I will engage with you when we're talking about this one. I'm not, is the answer.
Next up is Cloud Midgar Mercenary, which is Stoneforge Mystic at home. This is a white for a 2/1. When Cloud enters, search your library for an equipment card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and shuffle. As long as Cloud is equipped, if an ability of Cloud or an equipment attached to it triggers, that ability triggers an additional time.
Can you guys think of any really good equipment that have been printed recently that would trigger?
Recently?
Quarry Steel Cutter.
There we go. It triggers Quarry Steel Cutter twice.
If it's equipped to Cloud.
Yeah, I mean, there's a world in which that happens. I don't know.
Yeah, I think if maybe like a Yori on Taxes deck, if they need 5 or 6 Stoneforge Mystics to get their equipment package running, maybe that's something. But I don't see it here. I think it is worse at doing what Legacy needs to be doing than that is. And a 2/1 is not a good stat in a Bowmaster format. Maybe this gives redundancy for modern Hammer Time to make a resurgence. Or I've even seen standard Hammer Time lists. Colossus Hammer is not legal in standard, but the Aether Spark is. And Aether Spark triggering twice and getting twice as many loyalty. You're drawing a lot of cards to make a lot of mana very quickly. But yeah, I think this is going to be fringe playable in decks that need more than 4 Stoneforge Mystic for some reason.
And notably here, you want to be able to cast the equipment that you get. So it's not like you want to be doing this for your Batterskulls and your Cauldras and things of that nature. This needs to be redundancy for cheap equipment. So yeah, Colossus Hammer is exactly what I had in mind. But you very rarely see that in Legacy. Next up, the meme king of the set, Jumbo Cactuar. With 10,000 needles. It's a 5 colorless, 2 green, 1/7, but when it attacks, it gets plus 9,999 plus 0 until the end of turn.
Through the breach! Sneak attack! I mean, this is going to make a good video for someone. Probably Phil, if I had to guess. Maybe Brian does it too.
I'm sure I'll do it, yeah.
Yeah, like I know someone who's actually going to build it in paper. They're so excited about this card. They're like, it's better than Progenitus, it's better than Worldspine Worm. They're like, this is the best thing that's happened in years. I'm like, hey, I'm happy for you. Like, go, live your best life with Jumbo Cactuar.
Right. Yeah, the problem is that people aren't sneaking in Worldspine Worm or Progenitus anyway. We have better creatures like Atraxa and Emrakul. And this is a 1/7 with no evasion. If the coast is clear, take your 10,000 damage and get the hell out of here. But Bowmaster can block this twice. That feels bad. Swords to Plowshares, in response to its trigger, they gain 1 life and lose their 7 drop. Ooh, it's tough. I'm not a believer, but I am here for the memes.
Now, notably, not a legendary creature, so you can sneak in multiples of them. That's a pretty big upside.
Yeah, it's the only thing on this list that's not a legendary creature. It jukes the Caracas. All right, I'll read the next one, because this one actually does have kind of a cool rulesy infinite combo attached to it. This is Noctis, Prince of Lucius. It is a 4-drop, 1 Esper, 1 white, blue, black, legendary creature, human noble, 4/3 lifelink. You may cast artifact spells from your graveyard by paying 3 life in addition to their other costs. If you cast a spell this way, that artifact enters with a finality counter on it. The loop here is with Mox Diamond. Mox Diamond is a 0-drop that you can cast for 3 life from your graveyard, but it has a caveat in the rules that if it would enter, you have to discard a land. So if you don't discard a land, it doesn't enter, and it doesn't get a finality counter, and it just goes to your graveyard instead. You can cast as many Mox Diamonds as you have 3 life to cast with this thing, which goes fully infinite and wins the game with something like Aetherflux Reservoir. It could get you over on tight Paradox Engine loops. I don't know. It's probably janky. It's definitely cool for EDH. Like that's exactly an EDH combo. Like a bracket 4 deck, high bracket 3, low bracket 4 kind of deck. That's something you could get going. I might end up doing it in Legacy. We'll see. But it is just worth noting that a card that goes pseudo infinite with a highly played, powerful Legacy card is in this set.
Quick shout out to Mike Noble, supporter of the show, who will definitely buy this card for his Nobles CDH deck or EDH deck. Mike, we love you. Also, one quick thing about Jumbo Cactuar that I remembered is I think the best comparison to that card would be the Flage, the 7-mana Flage, where if it deals damage, your opponent loses the game, except if you were to cheat it into play, you lose. I think Jumbo Cactuar is basically just a new version of Flage without the drawback.
Yeah, Flage also has some version of Death Touch. I think it's a trigger. I don't think they've errated that.
All right, I said Flage. I meant Phage.
Phage, yeah, Phage. That's the one.
Okay, I was just looking this up. I'm like, those were not the same people, right? Like,
No. Phage is not Flage. Phage is...
The Untouchable.
She is untouchable. I'm trying to remember how this goes. I think Jessica becomes Phage. She gets corrupted by the Cabal, and she becomes Phage. And then Phage and Akroma die at the exact same moment and fuse into Corona, the false god.
That is correct.
So Phage is somebody, but they're not Flage, they're Jessica.
When Phage enters the battlefield, if you didn't play it from your hand, you lose the game. Whenever she deals combat damage to a creature, destroy that creature can't be regenerated. When she deals damage to a player, that player loses the game. A 7-mana 4/4.
Yep, Jumbo Cactuar is probably better than Phage, because you can at least cheat it in.
all right, why don't we go ahead and take a quick break for some ads, and then we'll just keep rolling with these.
I'll read this next one. This is Astrologian's Planisphere. Say that 3 times fast. This is Corey Steelcutter at home. 1 and a blue for an artifact equipment. It has Job Select, which is a new equipment ability. When this equipment enters, create a 1/1 colorless hero creature token, then attach this to it. Equipped creature is a wizard in addition to its other types, and has whenever you cast a non-creature spell, and whenever you draw your 3rd card each turn, put a +1 counter on this creature. And then it equips for 2. I wish this made another body. Just making the same body steadily larger is like, we could just play Sprite Dragon and not have to fiddle with all this other shit and have a comparable creature. If it like made another wizard when you draw your 3rd card each turn, we have the Tameo blueprint. We could see that getting into Corey Steelcutter territory, but I don't know. This looks mid to me.
It's so close. It's so close. Like, you think about it with Brainstorm, and you're like, okay, cast Brainstorm. It's a non-creature spell. +1/+1 counter. I drew my 3rd card. +1/+1 counter. Like, it seems like it's right there, and I just think this one ends up right on the wrong side of it.
Maybe in a deck like 8-cast or some blue stompy deck that needs a beater. It does have a lot of synergy in a spot like that. That's a deck like casting Thoughtcast in your main phase. It triggers this twice because you've already drawn for your turn. There might be something there, but I don't believe this is going to take things by storm. I wish it made another body. So close.
All right, next up is Matoya, Archon Elder. 2 and a blue for a 1/4 human warlock. Whenever you scry or surveil, draw a card. It's neat. Like, turning your fetch lands into draw a cards is cool. I don't think it does anything unless you create some infinite loop of scrying or surveilling that lets you draw your deck or something. Maybe there's a way to do that.
Dragon's Reach Channeler?
Yeah, this is just one of those things where if you already have some legacy level stuff going on, like a Dragon's Rage Channeler is in play and hasn't been removed, or you are resolving preordains or considers or fetching surveil lands, it will do better. But you have to spend 3 mana to put this legendary creature into play. And where are you finding deck space for that in this legacy format? It is blue, pitches to force. We got that going. It is 2 and a color, which is Ancient Tomb mana. There might be, again, shout out to the 8-cast gamers out there, some blue stompy blue painter used for this. I don't really know. If I could have Leyline of this, obviously it's busted, but you do have to spend the mana to get it there. But it's not a 5-drop, which is better than a lot of the things we've read already. 3 is attainable if you really want to do this.
It reminds me a little bit of Psy Master Thopterist, which saw play in like some of the original 8-cast lists. But I wonder, like, what is this doing better than Psy, and what would be its home? I'm not saying never. I'm just skeptical on if it ever crosses the bar.
Yeah, and you'd have to do a Scryfall deep dive to find what's the cheapest, most repeatable way to scry or surveil. And I suspect Dragon's Rage Channeler were already pretty close to finding the answer to that. There is Council's Deliberation from Lord of the Rings. Whenever you scry, if you control an island, exile it from your graveyard to draw a card. You could get a lot of cards in your hand if you do a lot of work, but you can also get a lot of cards in your hand if you resolve the One Ring in our format. So I don't know if this is going to do it.
Stock up comes to mind as another very good thing to do for that mana value.
Yeah, it's the exact same mana. That's a tough beat for Matoya here.
All right, next up is Cecil Dark Knight, a very aggressive creature. So this is 1 black for a 2/3 Death Toucher. Whenever it deals damage, you lose that much life. Then if your starting life total is less than or equal to half of it, you transform it into Cecil Redeemed Paladin, which is a 4/4 lifelinker. Whenever it attacks, other attacking creatures gain indestructible until end of turn.
Yeah, this thing hits like a truck. It hits you too. When do you want this? There are decks, we have the blueprint of trying to get to a specific life total that's right around 10 in Death Shadow, which, I mean, if this card didn't have a backside, I could see it in Death Shadow, but flipping into a 4/4 lifelinker doesn't really help you. You connect with that in your Death Shadows die after you did all that work. It's kind of weird. Are you going to attack yourself down with the front and then flip it into the back and then stop attacking to make sure your shadows stay alive? I'm not sure, though this does hit really hard. This is the tightest juke in where you talk about various combo decks like Black Saga Storm or Oops All Spells that pivot onto a creature plan and do something else with their Dark Rituals. Don't even need Dark Ritual for this one. You just need Swamp. And if your opponent's got a handful of Mindbreak Traps and Leyline of the Voids, this will get in. So that's out there.
This kind of reminds me of Kithian from way back when, where it was like a 2/1 on the front that transformed into a Planeswalker on the back. I imagine that in some format, this just aggressive body is just good enough to just beat down at face value and get the opponent dead. I don't know if that's Legacy. In Legacy, a lot of the black aggressive creatures have like Menace or Shadow or something like that. And this has Death Touch, which is fine and good. But the downside is very real. Like, playing this when your opponent has a flipped Delver or equivalent is very scary.
Yeah, imagine just slamming this in the blind. You're on the play, game 1, Swamp, Cecil, go, and your opponent plays Dragon's Rage Channeler. You're dead. There's not a damn thing you can do about it. Do you even attack? I think you're okay, go on turn 2.
Maybe you just sit there, let them peck you to death, turn it into a 4/4 lifelinker, hope they don't have the bolt when it's going to flip.
Right, yeah, Death Shadow versus Burn was actually a really cool matchup with interesting texture in the modern format where both of those decks were good. And it was the job of the Death Shadow player to kind of sit back, play control, let the opponent hit them under 13, and then start pushing back. But they're not just Fetch, Shock, Thoughtseize, Cycle, Street Wraith into the Burn player. You have to adjust your play patterns a little bit. But yeah, this card matches up pretty poorly versus some of the top decks in the format. But the stats cannot be denied.
This actually feels a little bit like a throwback to me. I'm probably dating myself here, but Brian, you might remember this as well. Before the Suicide Black deck in Legacy, there was a mono black beatdown deck that was more just 1 mana 2/2s with things like Carnophage from Exodus, where it's 1 black for a 2/2. In the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. And then they even did another version of it later on where it was black for a 3/3 where you lose, I believe, 2 life. Because it was 2 of them stapled together. But there was this black beatdown deck with just black aggressive creatures that existed for a hot second. Cecil, if that's how you pronounce it. When I read it to myself, I read it as Cecil. I'm not sure if I'm right or wrong, but it seems like you could try something like that again.
Yeah, that Carnophage and Sarcomancy is a card from Tempest. It's a 1 mana black enchantment. When it enters, you put a 2/2 zombie into play. And during your upkeep, if there are no zombies in play, Sarcomancy deals 1 to you. So that damage isn't guaranteed, but maybe that's better. I don't know. If you could Dark Ritual into 3 aggressive black 1-drops in modern day Legacy, I salute you, and please try it. Let me know how it goes.
I've done it. Mixed results. Mixed results. High highs, low lows.
I'm unsurprised.
Okay, so the next two I'm just going to kind of cover in one breath. We have been given a handful of new landfall creatures. There is Saz's Chocobo, 1 green for a 0/1 with landfall. Put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And then we have Tifa Lockhart, 1 and a green for a 1/2 with trample. Whenever a land under your control enters, double Tifa's power until end of turn. So for those of you that have enjoyed playing with Scythecat Cub and Bristly Bill alongside cards like Elvish Reclaimer or maybe Knight of the Reliquary, you are going to have new options for those sorts of decks.
That said, both of those cards are worse than both of the other cards we said. And again, deck space. But Bristly Bill is legal in Standard, so it'll be interesting having the Chocobo, Tifa, and Bill all together in Standard. Maybe that's something.
Next up, we have the Town Greeter. This is 1 and a green for a 1/1. When it enters, mill 4 cards. You may put a land card from among them into your hand. If you put a town card into your hand this way, you gain 2 life.
Yeah, it's another Ceodore Wayfinder, but it has the town upside. They made a bunch of guild gates in the set that are all towns, but they also printed the land when it enters, you gain 2. That's colorless.
New Radiant Fountain.
Yes, that's what it's called. Thank you, Phil. But, I mean, I guess this is somewhat playable in Pauper. Like, the Dredge deck already plays Ceodore Wayfinder. This is just Ceodore Wayfinder with potential upside.
Yeah, and there's the one from the Philology Archaeologist cycle, the green part of that one. I forget the name of that card, but that's another similar thing. I think, yeah, Pauper is a spot where if you want a critical mass of this sort of thing, you have it. Hogak is another place where Ceodore Wayfinder has shown up before in Legacy play. Do we need 8 Ceodore Wayfinders to make Hogak playable? It's unclear.
We might. I haven't seen a Hogak in Legacy in a hot minute.
This next card I'm pretty excited about.
Let's go.
1 in a red, so 2 mana total for a sorcery. Choose 1. Suplex deals 3 damage to target creature. If that creature would die this turn, exile it instead, or exile target artifact. So I think the closest comparison here would be a Braid.
That is the obvious one, yep, for sure.
Yep. So a Braid is an instant and it doesn't exile. And then there's Cast into the Fire, which is also an instant, which splits 1 and 1 damage, but it does exile target artifact. So why is Suplex interesting? Well, you can Burning Wish for it. When Vexing Bauble was legal, I wasn't allowed to play Pulverize anymore, and we were actually playing a Braid to gamble for out of the sideboard. So this could be a Burning Wish target, then you could board it in order to get around Chalice of the Void players like Phil. So I think that would be pretty interesting. Would I play it right now with Pulverize unlocked? Probably not, but it's definitely going to go into my maybe one day binder. And then in Pauper, you can remove bridges because it is a common. So now you have 3 damage based removal that can exile a bridge. Here in Legacy, could you think of any indestructible artifacts like, I don't know, Cauldron Complete or the One Ring? Like, this card has really good potential. I understand it's a sorcery, but I think exiling artifacts right now might be better than being an instant.
Yeah, that's probably true. I'm trying to think, are there cards that care in Legacy right now about being in the graveyard, like creatures? Like, I guess any deck playing like Tempo Reanimator, I guess like suplexing their Bowmaster and they can't reanimate it is a small upside. But are there... I can't really think of any obvious death triggers that we would need to navigate with the exile clause on the creature side.
Well, I mean, it's probably not going to happen, but there's a world that you could exile Nethergoyf.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a big one. If you catch Nethergoyf, that is one that comes back slowly but steadily from the graveyard. Great call.
And if you hypothetically, like, lightning bolt an Uro and then finish it with a suplex, you can send it to exile. I'm sure there will be situations like that.
Yep, and let me tell you, as the Uro gamer, if I've drawn a card on the front, drawn a card on the back, then you spend 2 cards exiling Uro, damn, buddy, you got me.
You might have that one local person in your metagame that just really loves Arclight Phoenix and you just want to shit on their day, so you could bring Suplex then. You could exile a Phoenix permanently.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, so there are some real ones like Nethergoyf, and then some terrible deals like Uro, and then some fake shit like Arclight Phoenix. We'll count it.
This also has perhaps the best flavor text of the set. It's a if you know moment for the Final Fantasy VI fans.
Yes, I saw a video come up of the scene from the game where this suplex happens, but it's very cool. I did not play this game, but also I will say, like, going back to the top of the episode where we said they craft these things extremely well and hit the story beats and the characters extremely well for the Final Fantasy players who want to feel something. I immediately understood the entire story of the scene from the game by looking at this card, the art and the flavor text, before I knew actually what happened. And I was like, oh, sick. Does somebody suplex a fucking train in one of these games? And turns out, yeah, they do.
Next up is Starting Town, which combo players, you're going to love this one. This land enters tapped unless it's your first, second, or third turn of the game. You can tap it for 1 colorless mana, or tap and pay 1 life to add 1 mana of any color.
This land is sweet! So if you're a degenerate combo gamer, it enters untapped for the turns that matter, and there's, potential upside. You could tap this land for a colorless instead of taking 1 life, because combo decks are usually life total based strategies with things like Ad Nauseam, Necro Dominance, things like that, or even Grizzlebrand, because in Modern, I do play a 5-color Neobrand deck where this land would seem pretty good there. That said, there's also some upside for fair gamers like Phil, where you could tap this for a colorless in your Eldrazi deck, and then later on, you get to use the colored aspect for your Splash Eldrazi like Linebreaker. I think that this card is going to mostly replace things like Mana Confluence or City of Brass.
Yeah, this, definitely in CEDH, where people are just greedy for any 5-color land they can get their hands on. I've registered Tarnished Citadel in a 3-color deck in CEDH. Like, we are hurting for mana like this. And yeah, in your first 3 turns of the game, it is better than Mana Confluence. I think talking about the design of the drawback, though, is really interesting. It enters tapped unless it's your first, second, or third turn of the game. This is not like Spirebluff Canal, where it can be your third land at any point. So if you keep a 2-lander, miss on turn 3, and then draw this on turn 4, it enters tapped. It just punishes the hell out of Mana Screw. So that's like a really interesting twist on this. They give you upside, but that downside is pretty real. And like, even if you're a combo player and you keep like a 1-lander with some stuff, and then you get wastelanded and you're a little short of going off, and then you rip this land on turn 4, that you have to play a tapped and you still don't get to go off. Really cool balance around a card that reads extremely well.
Next up, I want to talk about one of the tiered spells. We're going to use Fire Magic as an example here. So this has a Fire, Fira, and Firaga tier. At the Fire tier, which is 1 red, Fire Magic deals 1 damage to each creature. At the Fira tier, which will be a red plus 2, colorless, it deals 2 damage to each creature. And at Firaga, which would be a red and 5, it deals 3 damage to each creature. So there's going to be multiple of these. This will be a cycle of cards that scale up as the game goes on, but are pretty playable at their lower tiers.
Right. We've seen the blue one already. It's unsummon at the base, and then it becomes put the creature on top, and then it becomes shuffle the creature in at the various mana levels. That's probably not a legacy card, but we have End the Festivities, Electrickery, various ping all the little shitters thing. Shows up in Delver sideboards pretty regularly if the metagame is into that sort of thing. And being able to escalate that to 2 damage to each creature might be useful. I mean, dealing 1 to each creature is worse than, or not worse, it is strictly different than dealing with all your opponent's stuff, like End the Festivities or Electrickery do. But End the Festivities will never deal 2 or 3 damage, and this might. So that is a consideration in that spot. And it's an instant.
I am not super excited about Firaga, but the blue one is legal in Pauper because it's a common, and I think this card design really embraces Pauper, because in that format, you often end up with a bunch of extra mana when you play things that are a little bit more fair, and being able to essentially upkick your spell to do more later is exactly what Pauper wants. So this one being an uncommon, not quite what we want, but I think in general, I'm excited to see more of these cards printed.
Also, just in control decks, I mentioned Delver liking End the Festivities sometimes. the fire magic in just Jeskai control. Kill that Delver on turn 1, go 1 for 1 with it, and then by turn 3, you could sweep up any number of Delvers, and that's a deck that could reasonably get to 6 mana to do a full Anchor the Gods and sweep up everything. This is one that in 2 weeks when this video goes live, we'll probably have more of the cycle, and I hope there's a couple more that are worth considering for Eternal formats. I'll read this next one. Commune with Beavers. A sorcery for a single green mana. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You can reveal an artifact, creature, or land from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. This, probably not going to see Legacy play, but it's another Ancient Stirrings, Oath of Nissa, Abundant Harvest. Nope. Is Abundant Harvest the cantrip or the enchantment? There's a 4-mana... The 4-mana enchantment is Abundance. Abundant Harvest, right?
Abundant Harvest is land or spell.
Yeah, okay. So there's a bunch of green cantrips at this point that you could play if your deck is interested in that sort of thing.
I've been told on Twitter that this is the Green Ponder. How do you feel about that, Brian?
Wow.
We already have several green ponders. I don't know what they want from me. I mean, generally, when I'm pondering, it's a land that I want. Like, I'm keeping 1-landers on the strength of ponder. I tell my people who watch my stuff all the time, ponder's part of your mana base, treat it as such. Commune with Beavers being able to hit a land is actually super relevant.
As a quick aside here, there is a Dark Confidant reprint in this set that does have some pretty cool art. So there are some cool reprints here as well.
Right, and that doesn't matter for Legacy, but welcome to Pioneer, the great one. Bob Marr, he's here.
I did see somebody say that we're just Tarmogoyf away from playing classic Jundin Pioneer.
When did they print Bloodbraid Elf?
I mean, they haven't, but Liliana's already there.
Got your ass. It's Bloodbraid Elf and Deathrite Shaman that are the important ones. Well, we have Deathrite, but we don't have fetch lands. All right. Well, shout out to the Jund gamers. I hope that they are thriving. Isn't the best deck in Pioneer frequently Jund, though? Even though not, like, literally Jund, like, without the green, but mid-range Rakdos, just Jund him out? That's just one of the top decks in Pioneers for years. All right. Congrats on playing green cards again, Jund players.
So now we're going to talk quickly about a handful of cards that are going to come through us through the Commander decks. Starting with Yuna's Decision. If you are a blue-green show and tell player, this might be for you. So this is 3 and a green for a sorcery. You can either continue the pilgrimage, sacrifice a creature. If you do, draw a card, then you may put a creature card and or land card from your hand onto the battlefield. Or you can find another way. Return 1 or 2 target permanent cards from your graveyard to your hand. So if for some reason you are interested in playing a show and tell deck that has a bunch of Icefang Coatls to buy you time or something like that, maybe you could do something with this.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of an interesting backdoor natural order show and tell option, but those decks generally don't. Natural order decks do have creatures, show and tell decks don't. I'm not sure about that, but picking up 2 show and tells that got countered earlier in the game. Oh no, it's 2 target permanent cards? Ew. All right, well, the regrowth just got a lot worse in my brain as I read the card live. I'm not a believer.
Then we have Yuna Grand Summoner. So this is Bant and 1 for a 1/5 with Grand Summon. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. When you cast a creature spell this turn, that creature enters with 2 additional +1/+1 counters on it. And whenever another permanent you control is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, if it had 1 or more counters on it, you may put that number of +1/+1 counters on target creature. If you are interested in doing broken things with +1/+1 counters, a la Hardened Scales, Walking Ballista, that sort of stuff, you can probably find something to very easily go infinite with this second ability.
And it's important to note that her second ability is any counters on your creature when that creature dies become +1 counters on a different creature. So if you have one of those summon saga creatures we talked about earlier, if you cast it with her, it'll have 2 +1 counters on it, and it will have lore counters from being a saga when it dies, and then it'll throw 5 to 7 +1 counters onto something else when it goes. I think you thinking about all the creative ways that counters could exist in Legacy and how they could be filtered into +1 counters would be the key to unlocking this thing. But it is, again, a big chunky 4-mana legend that costs a lot of mana.
This feels like I could build a CEDH deck around this very easily, but probably not a Legacy deck.
Right. Phil, I will tee you up for this next one because this is Phil coded as hell. I will read it for you and then you tell me all of your thoughts. This is Shadow, Mysterious Assassin, 2 and a black for a legendary human assassin, 3/3 death touch, and it has throw. When Shadow deals combat damage to a player, you may sacrifice another non-land permanent. If you do, draw 2 cards and each opponent loses life equal to the mana value of that permanent.
This is like a bizarro sort of broadside bombardiers for a mono black deck. It's obviously very different. It does not have menace. It does not have haste. These are not of the same power level. But if you are like playing a mono black aggressive creature deck and you have some larger permanents, you draw 2 cards while you fling something, and it is dealing probably a real amount of damage. This is one of those things that I will probably think about when it comes out. Try it for a league, decide it's not quite good enough, but that's a lot of power at 3 mana, which is turn 1 in Legacy sometimes.
Yeah, Shadow and the first Sephiroth we talked about way at the top of the episode, the one that is an aristocrat and draws cards sometimes, that gives us 2 slow, clunky, engine-centric 2 and a B hitters that also synergize with each other, because if you're sacking things to Shadow, you're triggering Sephiroth. And, I don't know, it's probably not Legacy good enough, but these things do interlock in a way that's interesting. And having things that draw cards, because frequently when I'm playing those Black Stompy decks, I'm like, I just need 1 action spell here, and I could get over the hump. And having 2 different bodies that draw cards in different ways under different conditions. And burning them out's great, but turning that Chrome Mox on turn 7 into 2 fresh cards, that's what I'm really interested in.
I really wish this one wasn't legendary, though, because if I could play this in multiples, and throw 1 to fuel the other, I would be so in.
Yep, there's that drawback kicking in.
All right. Shalinda, Yevon Acolyte. This is green and a white for a 2/2 lifelinker. Whenever another creature you control enters, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature if its power is less than Shalinda's power. Otherwise, put a +1/+1 counter on Shalinda. Seems like you can probably find a way to use this as a combo piece that goes infinite with some persist creature or something.
Yep, a lot of +1 counters flying around in this commander deck.
Now, a more exciting one is Quina. Q? Gourmet? I read Final Fantasy IX. I never had these words pronounced for me. This one's 2 and a green for a 2/3. If 1 or more tokens would be created under your control, those tokens plus a 1/1 green frog creature token are created instead. And for 2 and sacrificing a frog, you can put a +1/+1 counter on Quina. So if you like Chatterfang and you wish you had more Chatterfangs, well, now you have Frog Chatterfang.
So this card is quite a bit worse than Chatterfang because Chatterfang is a full doubling season. Like if you make 2 tokens, you get those 2 tokens plus 2 squirrels. Quina is capped at 1 frog per token output, and Chatterfang has removal attached to it, where Quina has buffing itself. I think that if you want a Chatterfang, we already have Chatterfang, and I have not seen Chatterfang in Legacy, I think ever.
So the next card is Snort for 3 and a red sorcery. Each player may discard their hand and draw 5 cards. And then Snort deals 5 damage to each opponent who discarded their hand this way. Flashback for 5 and a red. So this is similar to Will of the Jeskai that was printed recently, where it's a May, and then it's a discard and draw 5, not 7, which is interesting because it looks like wheels now are going towards 5 cards and not 7. And in the past, I've played some Tony Scaponi decks where they've played Ignite the Future. And if you're unfamiliar with that card, it's 3 and a red. You exile the top 3 until your next turn you can play those cards, and then has flashback for 7 and a red, so 8 mana total. So I feel like Snort is just an upgraded Ignite the Future, and these are both commander cards. They don't exist in typical sets. So I saw some people calling Snort the new Echo of Aeons. I don't even think that's remotely close, but I do think Snort is an upgraded Ignite the Future and could see some play in some Bergie-styled Red Legacy deck one day. I don't think it's phenomenal, but the potential's there.
Yeah, it's interesting you pointed out that the wheels are leaning towards 5 cards these days. They're also leaning optional, where each player may discard their hand. I like when my wheels just take it. Like it or not, we're Wheel of Fortune, let's go. And we got one card left to talk about. Probably not going to see this one in Legacy, but it seems reasonable in a high power format like CEDH where everyone has treasures laying around. This is Avalanche of Sector 7, 2 and a red, Menace for a legendary human rebel. It has star 3 stats. Its power is equal to the number of artifacts your opponents control, so that will be better when you have more than one opponent. And whenever an opponent activates an ability of an artifact they control, Avalanche of Sector 7 deals 1 to that player. Just shredding anyone trying to go off with treasure tokens. A deck, the CEDH format is completely propped up by fast mana artifacts, punishing everyone anytime they use one. Smothering Tithe is one of the key cards of that format. Just beat the hell out of people for using it. I don't know if this will get over in your average deck, like some 4-color, like Timna Crom style deck. I don't know where you'd find room for this, but something like Magda or Slicer, any of those base red decks, Rakdos, the Kingpin. There's a bunch of red and Rakdos decks that this might have a home in.
What I really like about this is it punishes your opponent for having or using artifacts. So sometimes when cards like this are played, they only do one of the two. So either this thing has massive power, or you sacrifice a bunch of your treasures and you take a bunch of damage. So, like, you are kind of winning either way.
Yeah, for sure. Well, those are all the cards that we know about so far that we thought were worth talking about. I'm sure there will be more in the coming weeks, and if the format breaks on the back of one of these things, we'll talk about it in the next episode. But, gentlemen, how are we feeling about the Final Fantasy we've seen so far? Bryant, let us rip.
I think that it looks a little underpowered for Legacy, but that's probably a good thing.
I would agree with that. I think there's a lot of sweet cards here that are going to do cool things in some format, but I think for the most part, we're going to try some things in Legacy and find that they're not good enough, and I am totally fine with that.
I agree. We just filled an hour and 6 minutes talking about this set, and I think about almost every single card we said probably not going to clear the bar in Legacy, but we had a lot to talk about and think about. And what else do you want from a standard legal set?